this blue ocean applies to everything. In the book, Your Next 5 Moves, I talk about how everybody has to find a blue ocean. It also applies to branding on social media, how you separate your message from others, media, how TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, in every possible way, one has to be thinking about blue ocean. Again, it's such a day-to-day word I use referencing your book. If I run into somebody that hasn't read Blue Ocean Strategy, I'm confused on how you haven't read this book yet, because it's that much of a revolutionary book. So I'm going to keep selling. For as long as I'm around, I'm going to do my part to sell. But let's continue with a couple different things. You know, in the Beyond Disruption, you know, the concept of non-disruptive creation, which is something you guys talk about a lot, and which involves, you know, creating new markets without destroying existing ones, and is argued to be equally important and potentially more advantageous. And you give an example of non-disruptive creation is exemplified by innovations such as microfinance, life coaching, Viagra, crowdfunding, smartphone accessories, which expanded the economic pie without displacing existing businesses. Now, we're all capitalists. And as capitalists, you know, the one thing about capitalism is there is a competition, there is market share, there is, you know, you're a smaller company, you get into the marketplace, and barrier to entry, you know, the bigger guys have 42% of market share or 31%, and now you're going to come in and you're going to take 3% of it. They're not happy about it. Now it's 7%, now it's 11%. They went from 31% to 20%. They're now upset. Their board is complaining. What do we need to do? Now, then there becomes competition, right? And there's a battle, there's a fight in the board meetings. They're talking about your company and what do we need to do to address this, you know? So how do you compete without competing in a capitalistic society?
Patrick, so first of all, it is very much a capitalist idea, of course. And so let me back up. One is we are never, you know, even in Blue Ocean, what we're never saying is don't compete and only create, right? In reality, business is both. You have to compete and create. You create this blue ocean. You're going to, other people try to jump in. You have to compete. So you need to do both. The premise of Beyond Disruption is, hey, everyone is focusing on the field of innovation, is disrupt this, disrupt that, take on this existing industry. As though when you take on an existing industry, the industry is going to say, oh, yes, welcome, come on in. Please take the bologna off of my bread. I'm going to sit back and relax. But of course, that's not true. They're going to sit and punch you right smack right back as you're doing. And what we're saying is, well, wait a minute, that is certainly one opportunity. And believe me, if you have an industry that's asleep at the wheel, that is no longer effective, that has a lot of negative externalities. And I know, Patrick, you've spoken a lot about, you know, some of that you see in the news media industry. It's not as effective as it could be. Then maybe disruption is absolutely the path, right? So we're not saying it's not. But what we're saying is, why are we shielding ourselves from thinking about these opportunities where I can create these billion-dollar new markets and not have to go against the big guys and create them outside of existing industries? And that for us is the opportunity. Why should I compete or disrupt you and take on you when I can just sidestep over to the right and I can open up potentially this new market that everyone has been ignoring, where I actually have no competition at all, and there is no one I need to disrupt and displace. And the premise of the book is, why aren't we having a conversation on that? Why is that overlooked? Because that is really where, you know, economics and, by the way, increasingly, what we would say is social good can be manifested, because I'm not displacing people. And if you think that's not important, you just be one of these recent tech executives that are being left losing their job every single day nowadays. And when you're at the other end of that, that hurts. So that's our premise there, Patrick.
Is that possible though?
Can I add something on top of what Renee said?
Of course. Listen, a man in a blue ocean who's not in a red ocean always has the mic. So yes, please.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, so what I wanted to add is that, for example, just give one specific example. Ocean liner, Atlantic Ocean across from New York to London, all this, that's huge business at the time. And you know, Winston Churchill even said that is where all VIPs and troopers moving around during the war. So it was really ocean liner. All of a sudden, jet invented, flying over the sky. So now ocean line's in trouble. So jet travel disrupted. Entire ocean liner is struggling. So therefore, they are disrupted. So people are losing jobs, they're shrinking their business. Now, of course, there are two options to it. One is fight back, getting past the airline business or taking any other jet travelers, which actually one company tried to do, but they realized soon there's a huge pushback. Market share battle is because of regulation. They just bombarding with them. Always big guy, like obviously it's nice to hear, David take on Goliath. Goliath always big, huge pocket resources. It's never easy to disrupt the big guys. Big guys will retaliate. So what happened is that this company says, hey, why do we disrupt back? That's not right. And we have these ships. Why do we change the concept to create non-disruptive creation? Creating without disruption, meaning, okay, make their competition irrelevant by having vacationing at sea. Obviously, ocean liner and transportation means from New York to London, for example. So why should we, in that business anyway, the business is disrupted and ruined. Now we want to use the same fleet modification to get the huge business, almost monopoly, nobody does, vacationing at sea. So cruise tourism began creating without disruption. What happened? A lot of new jobs came in, and then so many people excited. Obviously, when you see the cruise tourism industry today, $200 billion business, you create the jobs without disrupting anyone, new excitement, new pleasure, new progress. Well, you go to cruise, beautiful thing to do. But this is a good example of creation without disruption. So therefore, that principle behind it, positive sum approach. Same as blue ocean. Why you compete up front? Why you have a fight with the sharks? Just let's go and create. Similar principle. Why do you disrupt? Go to create without disruption, non-disruptive creation, so that you have your own market. When you look at the positive sum approach, blue ocean ship, beyond disruption, has common denominator, thinking about positive sum thinking. That's one. Number two, most importantly, under the capitalism, we are not in the illusion to be socialistic twist. What happened? Today, whether we like it or not, reality is you should make the money on the way and help also stakeholders. You cannot be selfish making money only against the people's happiness. So this mood is coming up, and you hear Davos and anyone talking stakeholder capitalism, all these things. Now even they put the question on Milton Friedman, who is believing in shareholder maximization of oligarchy. So he asked question Milton Friedman, one of the biggest economists of the 20th century, and say, well, how about society? He said, well, if you maximize the share of your owners, society will take care of itself. This is the outscope of of the company. But that's not true. That we have a lot of issues for network externalities, which is cost for society happen, like pollutions and inefficiencies, unhappy people, losing the jobs. As well, it's no longer choice. We need to accommodate somehow economic growth. At the same time, you should be seen as a good citizen of the world to be acceptable, especially that, in this MJ generation are very sensitive that all these big people just make money against people's happiness. They just object that. So how can you simultaneously pursue, like we did in Blue Ocean, simultaneous pursuit of depreciation low cost, same thing, simultaneous pursuit of economic growth and good for society. This is the main compulsion why non-disruptive creation is not only good, but also that's way to go to the new capitalism. So thinking differently rather than, only good for society.
Do I have your permission to?
Unavoidable.
Can I push back? Can I push back?
Yes.
Okay, I want to push back, and I'm curious to know what you say about this. So, as an operator, when you're in it, and the last 3 years, some weird things happened as an operator being in it. So one, making money against people's happiness, right? And we're all capitalists, and all of a sudden, the last 3 years, when the market started forcing everybody to work from home, we started being bullied by employees who were coming in and saying, if you don't double my salary and allow me to work from home, I'm going to go somewhere else. So they started doing that to us, the employers. And I would say, listen, guy, it's not a good idea for you to do this. Because in 3 years, you're going to have a resume with 4 different jobs, and nobody wants to have somebody, for the most part, that has 4 different jobs in 3 years because you get around. And that says you don't stay with one company. No, but these guys are offering me 120 and you're only paying me 65 and they're offering me 120 plus working from home. I'm taking it. Great. So that was the war then. They took it. Year went by, they got fired. They went from that company to another company that I paid them 145. They went to another company that I paid them 155. And then the market realized you're only worth 65. And then they couldn't get a job for 6 or 12 months. And now they're bitching, complaining about the fact that they can't land a job. They're upset. But now the employer, who is now still there, and they're now sitting there saying, look what happened to the market. I can't afford to pay that. Now the employee's coming back with the following line. Look, I made a mistake. I always loved you guys, and, you guys were the best, and, I made a mistake leaving. I had to leave. It was almost like the perfect thing God sent, because I had to leave to realize how amazing you guys are, and I miss you. And even my wife talked about it, and we were crying together. Anyways, now we hear the sob story, okay? As an operator, if I told you this happened to me 10 times, it's a small number. But here's the part that I wonder how you guys can do this. You've been successful in the past, so I know you can do it. I'm wondering how you're able to make that shift with the mindset. Is when the selfish gene is linked to an incentive, which is what makes capitalism work, you get incentivized to building a company and doing it better than the other guy did it. And for that, you get compensated. Maybe you go onto the public market, you sell private, et cetera, et cetera. You get equity, you sell $1 million exit, $7 million exit, $42 million exit, $1 billion exit, and people get paid. And in the selfish gene, where employees are sitting there saying, look, if I get a better offer, I'm leaving. How do you prevent both the operators, the founders, the guys that started a company, as well as the employers, to set aside the selfish gene to not just do what's best for them and do what's best for the marketplace? Because right now, the whole thing that's going on with AI, Musk and Wozniak are saying, slow down, pump the brakes on AI. And the other side is saying, you can't stop pump the brakes on AI because they're going to continue doing it. So how do we prevent that? How do we manage the motives of selfish genes?
Chan, let me go. Okay.
So,
So one thing, Patrick, to step back, one thing is about your employees you're discussing, and I appreciate your challenge there. And I appreciate you just talked to them very directly and said, listen, this is what I can do. It doesn't make economic sense for me to do differently. And if you need to leave, you're going to leave. And I'm going to hold to my principle, and I know how to run a business. And that's what I see. And so maybe some left, maybe some are coming back. That's a separate issue. But beyond disruption, what we're talking about there, non-disruptive creation, it's not asking for any sacrifice of your economics. The power of it is that in your very pursuit of economic good beyond existing industry boundaries, you're able to achieve economic and social good at the same time, because I'm not displacing others in the marketplace. And so it's not a trade-off of one or the other. Historically, we think about doing social good or corporate social responsibility. It's a cost function for an organization. Naturally, when times get tough, that money gets shrunk. You have to, because you're in survival mode then. So that's natural. And so it's a trade-off, one for the other. What inspired us about when we saw this non-disruptive opportunity is the ability to achieve both at one time. Now, and then Chan, maybe take it from there, because, your question for me is a little bit on the employee side. I commend you for what you did there. Having that honest conversation. I think the real key there is, a concept that we discuss as well is called fair process. Being direct with your employees about what you can and cannot do and why, and holding for it. So I guess that might be my perspective there. And the individual is going to do what they're going to do depending on, their bias and their opportunistic action.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.